close your eyes and imagine the sound of gentle waves lapping against ancient stone. The year is 1799, and French soldiers are digging fortifications near the town of Rosetta in the Nile Delta. Their shovels strike something hard, something that has been waiting in the sand for over 1,000 years. What they've found is a simple black stone covered in 3 different scripts. Little do they know, this unassuming piece of basalt will become the key that unlocks the secrets of a civilization so ancient, so magnificent, that it had already been old when Caesar walked the earth. Tonight, let that discovery be your gateway as we drift back through the mists of time to a land where the sun god Ra sailed across endless skies, where pharaohs built monuments that still touch the heavens, and where the mighty Nile River carved out the cradle of human civilization. Allow yourself to sink deeper into comfort as we begin our journey along the banks of the eternal river, where history itself was born. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus called Egypt the gift of the Nile. And as you settle into deeper relaxation, picture this remarkable river flowing northward through the desert like a green ribbon of life. Each year, as predictable as the rising sun, the Nile would swell with the monsoon rains of distant Ethiopia. The waters would rise, slowly, gently, carrying with them the rich, dark silt that would transform the desert into a garden. Imagine those first settlers, perhaps around 6,000 BC, discovering this miracle. They learned to read the river's moods, to plant when the waters receded, to harvest when the sun blazed overhead. The Nile became their calendar, their lifeline, their god. The ancient Egyptians believed the Nile was the earthly form of the celestial river that flowed through the heavens. As you breathe in and out, let yourself float on those ancient waters, carried by currents that have flowed for millennia. Villages grew along the riverbanks, small communities that learned to work together, to share the bounty of the flood, to store grain for the lean years. These simple farming communities had no idea they were laying the foundation for one of history's greatest civilizations. The fertile black soil they called Kemet, the black land, stretched in a narrow band along the river. Beyond lay the Deshret, the red land, the vast desert that protected them like a natural fortress. Between these two worlds, between the life-giving water and the eternal sand, a unique culture began to emerge. Let your mind drift back even further to around 4000 BC, when Egypt was not yet Egypt, but a collection of small kingdoms scattered along the Nile like jewels on a string. This was the Predynastic period, a time of gradual awakening. Small villages were growing into towns, towns into cities, and ambitious leaders were beginning to dream of something greater. Picture the Badarian culture, named after the modern town of Badari. These early Egyptians were skilled craftsmen, creating beautiful pottery with rippled surfaces that caught the light like water. They buried their dead in simple graves, facing west toward the setting sun, beginning a tradition that would endure for thousands of years. As time flowed like the Nile itself, the Nagada culture emerged. These people were traders and innovators, their influence spreading like rings on still water. They developed the first hieroglyphic writing, those mysterious symbols that would captivate imaginations for millennia. Imagine their busy workshops, artisans crafting ivory combs and slate palettes, painters creating the first formal Egyptian art with its distinctive style. The dead were buried in increasingly elaborate tombs, surrounded by pottery, jewelry, and tools for the afterlife. Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, two lands that would become one. Upper Egypt, the narrow valley stretching south from Memphis, where the river runs between golden cliffs. Lower Egypt, the broad delta where the Nile fans out into the Mediterranean, creating a vast wetland teeming with life. Each region developed its own customs, its own gods, its own rulers. The cobra goddess, Wadjet, watched over Lower Egypt, while the vulture goddess, Nekhbet, protected Upper Egypt. These ancient symbols would later crown the pharaohs as protectors of both lands. Trade routes connected these early kingdoms. Precious stones from the south, cedar wood from Lebanon, gold from Nubia. With trade came ideas, technologies, and the slow realization that unity might bring strength. Around 3100 BC, a king arose whose name would echo through eternity. Narmer, also known as Menes, the unifier of the two lands. Close your eyes and envision his great victory, the submission of Lower Egypt to his rule, the first time in history that the entire length of the Nile Valley was united under one crown. The famous Narmer palette depicts this momentous event. The king, larger than life, holding his enemies by the hair, about to deliver the decisive blow. But this was more than conquest. It was the birth of a new idea. For the first time, one ruler claimed dominion over both the red crown of Lower Egypt and the white crown of Upper Egypt. The double crown, the pshent, became the symbol of unified power. Narmer established his capital at Memphis, where the valley meets the delta, where the two lands join. From this strategic location, he could control trade routes, command the resources of both regions, and project power in all directions. The early dynastic period had begun. Dynasty follows dynasty, like waves on the shore, each ruler adding to the great work of civilization. The concept of divine kingship took root. The pharaoh was not merely a man, but the living embodiment of the god Horus, son of Ra, protector of Ma'at, the cosmic order. Imagine the royal court, scribes keeping meticulous records on papyrus, officials managing the complex irrigation systems, priests conducting elaborate rituals to ensure the Nile's annual flood. The machinery of state was taking shape piece by piece, creating the foundation for 3,000 years of continuous rule. The third dynasty brought forth a man whose vision would quite literally reach toward the heavens, Djoser, and his brilliant architect, Imhotep. Together, they conceived something that had never existed before, a building that would touch the sky. Let yourself stand in the shadow of the step pyramid at Saqqara, the world's first monumental stone building, rising from the desert like a stairway to the gods. 6 massive steps, each smaller than the last, climbing toward eternity. Before Djoser, royal tombs were low, rectangular structures called mastabas. But Imhotep dared to dream differently. He began with a traditional mastaba, then added another on top, then another and another, until he had created something unprecedented, a pyramid. Picture the thousands of workers moving massive blocks of limestone with ropes and ramps, guided by Imhotep's revolutionary vision. Each block was carefully cut and fitted, each course perfectly aligned. The pharaoh's eternal resting place was taking shape, stone by stone. The complex around the pyramid was like a city of the dead. Courtyards and chapels, galleries and chambers, all enclosed by a wall with 14 gates, but only one that truly opened. The others were false doors, designed to confuse evil spirits and protect the pharaoh's Ka, his spiritual essence. Imhotep himself became legendary. Physician, architect, high priest of Ra. Later generations would worship him as a god of medicine and wisdom. His revolutionary pyramid would inspire countless others, setting the stage for the greatest architectural achievements in human history. But the step pyramid was more than just a tomb. It was a statement of power, a demonstration of what unified Egypt could achieve. For the first time, human ambition had been made manifest in stone, reaching toward the heavens in defiance of mortality itself. The fourth dynasty dawned like the sun over the eastern desert, bringing with it the greatest age of pyramid building the world has ever known. This was the age of Sneferu, of Khufu, of monuments that would outlast empires. Drift with me to Dashur, where Sneferu, the first pharaoh of the 4th dynasty, was experimenting with pyramid design. His first attempt, the bent pyramid, changed angles midway up, perhaps because the builders feared it would collapse. But failure taught him success, and his second pyramid, the Red Pyramid, became the first true pyramid, smooth-sided, perfect in its geometry. But it was Sneferu's son, Khufu, who would create the ultimate expression of pyramid building, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Let your mind's eye rise above the desert and behold this wonder. Originally 481 feet tall, built from over 2 million stone blocks, each weighing 2.5 tons. Picture the scene at Giza around 2580 BC. Tens of thousands of workers, not slaves, as once believed, but skilled craftsmen, farmers during the flood season, and specialists from across the kingdom. They lived in purpose-built villages, ate well, and received medical care. This was a national project, a testament to Egypt's organizational genius. The precision is breathtaking. The base is level to within just 2.1 centimeters. The sides are oriented to the cardinal directions with incredible accuracy. Inside, the king's chamber contains a granite sarcophagus cut from a single block, transported from quarries 500 miles away. Khufu's pyramid was joined by those of his successors. Khafra, whose pyramid stands beside the Great Sphinx, and Menkaure, whose smaller pyramid completed the iconic trio. Together, they created a necropolis that would inspire wonder for millennia. The Great Sphinx itself, that enigmatic guardian with the body of a lion and the face of a pharaoh, carved from a single outcrop of limestone. For over 4,500 years, it has gazed eastward toward the rising sun, keeping its eternal vigil over the pyramids. Imagine the religious ceremonies conducted in the pyramid complexes, priests performing the daily rituals, offering food to the dead pharaohs, maintaining the cosmic order. Each pyramid was connected to a mortuary temple where the ka of the pharaoh was sustained for eternity. The pyramids were more than tombs. They were resurrection machines, designed to ensure the pharaoh's successful journey to the afterlife. The very shape, pointing toward the heavens, was believed to help the pharaoh's soul ascend to join the circumpolar stars, the imperishable ones that never set. Even the greatest ages must come to an end. And as the 4th dynasty waned, so too did the age of the Great Pyramids. The 5th and 6th dynasties built smaller pyramids, their resources stretched thin by the massive projects of their predecessors. Picture the sun setting over the old kingdom, the central authority gradually weakening, like a great tree whose roots are loosening in the soil. The pharaoh's power was being challenged by ambitious nobles, local governors who had grown strong administering their regions. The reasons for decline were complex. The cost of building the pyramids had drained the royal treasury. Climate change had made the Nile's floods less predictable, and the pharaohs had granted too much land to temples and nobles, reducing their own power base. Regional governors, called nomarchs, began to act more like independent rulers. They built their own elaborate tombs, maintained their own armies, and sometimes ignored royal decrees. The unity that Narmer had forged was slowly fragmenting. By the end of the 6th dynasty, around 2180 BC, the Old Kingdom had effectively ended. The last pharaoh, Pepi II, supposedly ruled for 94 years, the longest reign in Egyptian history. But longevity could not prevent the inevitable collapse. The royal capital at Memphis lost its authority. Governors stopped sending taxes to the pharaoh, and local conflicts erupted across the kingdom. The golden age of pyramid building was over, giving way to a period of chaos and fragmentation. Yet even in decline, the Old Kingdom had established the fundamental character of Egyptian civilization: the divine kingship, the elaborate afterlife beliefs, the monumental architecture, the sophisticated art and literature that would define Egypt for millennia to come. The collapse of the Old Kingdom ushered in what historians call the First Intermediate Period, a time of division and uncertainty that lasted about 150 years. Yet even in this apparent chaos, Egypt's essential character endured. Imagine the kingdom fractured, multiple rulers claiming the title of pharaoh, each controlling only a portion of the ancient realm. The north was ruled from Heracleopolis, the south from Thebes. Sometimes there were 3 or even 4 pharaohs ruling simultaneously, each insisting on their legitimacy. This was not the end of Egyptian civilization, but rather a time of transformation. Without the massive royal projects to consume resources, local cultures flourished. Art became more varied and experimental. Literature grew more personal and introspective. The famous Admonitions of Ipuwer describes this period. The land turns around, as does a potter's wheel. The poor man has become rich, and the rich man has become poor. Social order was inverted, traditional hierarchies challenged. Yet the dream of unity never died. Local rulers continued to call themselves pharaohs, to build pyramids, though much smaller ones, and to maintain the ancient rituals. The cultural memory of the great unified kingdom remained strong. Gradually, the rulers of Thebes in the south grew stronger. The Intef family, and then the Mentuhoteps, began to push northward, slowly reunifying the kingdom through a combination of military conquest and diplomatic marriage. Around 2055 BC, a remarkable pharaoh named Mentuhotep II achieved what had seemed impossible. He reunited Egypt under a single crown, founding what historians call the Middle Kingdom. This was Egypt's second golden age, a time of renaissance and renewal. Picture the relief and celebration as unity was restored. Trade routes reopened, major construction projects resumed, and the pharaoh's authority was once again acknowledged from the first cataract to the Mediterranean Sea. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs were different from their Old Kingdom predecessors. They were more accessible, more concerned with the welfare of their people. The royal inscriptions speak of the pharaoh as the shepherd of his people, responsible for their well-being. Amenemhat I, founder of the 12th dynasty, established a new capital at Ichtawi, Caesar of the two lands, strategically located between Memphis and Thebes. From here, he could control both Upper and Lower Egypt, while remaining accessible to both regions. This was the golden age of Egyptian literature. Works like the Story of Sinuhe and the Eloquent Peasant were composed, masterpieces that are still read today. The pharaohs themselves were patrons of learning, establishing schools and libraries. Senusret III, perhaps the greatest pharaoh of the Middle Kingdom, expanded Egypt's borders and strengthened its administration. He conquered Nubia, bringing gold and exotic goods into the kingdom. His military campaigns were recorded in detail, showing a level of strategic planning that rivaled any ancient power. The Middle Kingdom also saw advances in mathematics, medicine, and engineering. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, the world's oldest surgical text, dates from this period. Egyptians were performing complex operations, understanding anatomy, and documenting medical procedures with scientific precision. But even the Middle Kingdom eventually fell to the same forces that had toppled the Old Kingdom: political fragmentation, economic strain, and foreign invasion. The Second Intermediate Period saw Egypt divided again, this time conquered by foreign rulers called the Hyksos. Yet from this low point would rise Egypt's greatest age, the New Kingdom, established by Ahmose I around 1550 BC. This was to be Egypt's imperial age, when the pharaohs would rule an empire stretching from Nubia to the Euphrates. Picture young Ahmose driving the Hyksos from Egypt, using their own innovations against them, mastering the horse-drawn chariot and the composite bow. The experience of foreign rule had taught the Egyptians a hard lesson. Isolation was no longer enough. To be secure, they must be strong. The new kingdom pharaohs were warrior kings. Thutmose III, the Napoleon of ancient Egypt, who fought 17 campaigns in the Near East. Ramesses II, who built more monuments than any other pharaoh and ruled for 66 years. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh who ruled for 22 years and built the magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. This was the age of the great temples: Karnak, Luxor, Abu Simbel. The pharaohs no longer built pyramids, but were buried in hidden tombs in the Valley of the Kings, their mummies surrounded by treasures like those found in Tutankhamun's tomb. And as our journey through ancient Egypt draws to a close, let yourself rest in the knowledge that this civilization, which began with farmers watching the Nile's flood, created wonders that still amaze us today. The pyramids still stand, the temples still inspire, and the ancient wisdom of Egypt continues to influence our world. The Rosetta Stone that French soldiers found in 1799 unlocked these secrets for us. But the real treasure was always the story itself, the tale of human ambition and achievement that we carry forward into tomorrow. Sleep well, traveler, and dream of ancient Egypt, where the sun god Ra sails across eternal skies, and the mighty Nile flows on forever.